Hello there, and a very warm welcome to yet another edition of the Spotlight, and we meet again on yet another Monday evening bringing to you a story that ignites change. Now, dear viewers, mediation is not just an alternative to litigation, it is also the road to peace. So today we have with us in our studios two individuals to talk to us about this process that we often talk about, and that is mediation. Firstly, I would like to introduce Ms. Kathleen Ruane Leedy, President and co-founder of Teen Mediation International, on my left right here. Thank you for joining us. And on my extreme left, we also have Raasheda Azim, alumni of Iman Academy of Sri Lanka. So two of you are in the studios. Kathleen, we have had a program before on mediation, but that was, I don't think we didn't speak much in depth of it. But today we are here, and thank you for joining us in the studios to give us a great insight and a deep insight on mediation here in Sri Lanka, and also on Teen Mediation International. So thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
All right, so this is a bit of a very broad topic and I'm not entirely sure the next 45 minutes to 1 hour will be enough to cover this session. But starting off with a very basic question, you come with about 20 to 30 years of experience in the field, not only in Sri Lanka, but working with many industries and companies from across the globe. So what was the turning point, Kathleen, for you to get into this field of mediation?
It was an accident.
Right.
I was sitting with my friends and they were talking about the Air Trans Southwest merger in the United States. They were coming out of a meeting and they were very disgruntled.
Okay.
And they were telling the story about the meeting, how everything went wrong with it. And I looked down at them and I said, how come you didn't ask them this, and this? And why didn't you mention that? And they all turned and looked at me and said, you need to be a mediator. And I said, what's a mediator? And that's how it started.
Back in the day, Kathleen, there was no concept as mediator as a full-time job role.
No, not for me, especially.
Okay. So, Raasheda, now, in terms of mediation, what does it mean to you as an alumni of the academy?
I think for someone who's going into society and someone who's been an introvert majority of my life, I'm so used to just sticking into my burrow of comfort and my own loneliness that mediation has helped me get out of it and realize that other people's problems could help you figure out your own problems and break it down into smaller pieces.
So, Kathleen, in terms of mediation, there's sometimes a bit of a misconception that people think, is it more towards law? Do you have to be a lawyer to be a mediator? A lot of questions come in the field, but I would like to ask from you, what is mediation all about?
You don't have to be a lawyer.
Okay.
I was a high school teacher for 22 years. You can come from any walk of life. And at its core, mediation is about everyone having a fully empowered conversation at the table, looking for their own personal win-win.
So is there some qualification that backs a mediator in this area of expertise?
Across the world, there's a 40-hour basic training that mediators take to be able to become a mediator, but that's just the beginning, because then you can specialize. You can specialize in divorce, bankruptcy, landlord-tenant, small claims. You specialize up from the basic class, which is usually another 24 hours, so you keep going up the ladder, so to speak.
So how does this process of mediation start, Kathleen? How is the mediator hired? What is the starting point for this entire process that we call mediation?
There's two branches.
Okay.
There are mediators in courts in the United States, and when a person goes to court, they have an option to mediate before they talk to the judge. That's one option. The second option is mediators. We have private practice, and we advertise ourselves, and people find us on the internet. They find us on LinkedIn. They find us and they reach out to us.
Is mediation a viable option? Do you think it's very sustainable for a community or for two parties having a disagreement?
It is, because it's the only place in our justice system where everyone can talk about their life in full and look for a win-win solution. When you move away from mediation to arbitration or into lawyering, a third party makes a decision for you about their life and they don't even know what time you wake up in the morning. So That's why it's so powerful.
So you mentioned arbitration as well, and yet another common term that we often hear in the legal sector, mediation, arbitration. Is it the same process, Kathleen?
No, arbitration is similar to a mini court.
Okay.
Where again, an arbitrator, a third person, will be making a decision. It's usually involved with contract language, so arbitrators are paying very close attention to violations or not of contractual language.
So being an arbitrator is not being a lawyer.
No.
It's a different,
Yeah.
an arbitrator is different to a mediator.
Yes.
But how do you strike the difference?
Arbitration is very concisely involved with paperwork, language,
Right.
contractual language, violations, yes, like post office arbitrations in the United States, just finished ending recently.
So what about mediation? Isn't it something similar to arbitration?
Mediation is not like a small court like arbitration is. Mediation is where everyone has a voice at the table, and it's a mediator's job to make sure everyone is heard and is fully empowered to express what they see for themselves, self-determination, a win-win in making decisions about the outcome.
Okay. So Raasheda, as you mentioned, you know, with you're coming from the younger generation, heading into society and, you know, taking on this jungle that we call life. So amongst your peers, what is their sort of opinion and view on mediation?
Coming from a student from Iman Academy, our classes only consist of like less than 10 people each. So it's not like everyone isn't friends with each other. Everyone is forced to be friends with each other. So you're forced to like interact with each other and overcome that kind of dispute that you have with each other. So a mediator being there is always like a support instead in case you feel misunderstood or like you can't get your point across.
So how do these classes work at the academy, Raasheda? Does it work with a process? Is there like a teacher to overlook? How does it work?
Yeah, there's always teachers to overlook, but we are given our own freedom and our freedom of thought, freedom of actions, so we can explore ourselves and what we want to do with our world and our abilities.
So Kathleen, being a mediator is also not an easy task when you look at it. So what are the essential skills that make a mediator successful?
Patience.
Really?
Good listening skills, but a real genuine interest in hearing what people are saying and then proving back through summary that I have heard you because I'm summarizing what you just told me and then asking open-ended questions.
Okay. So when you mediate, it's of course 2 parties or 3 parties, I believe.
I've had as many as 9, but
together?
Yes, but my friends who did Catholic Church, you know, abuse cases had 24 people in the room, so it can be really intense.
Isn't that somewhat like a courtroom when you?
No, because each person is being empowered and each person can speak for themselves. You know how when you go into court you can't speak for yourself, your lawyer has to speak for you?
Yeah.
Well, mediation you speak for yourself.
Right. So you have had as many as 20?
I've had as many as 9.
9 cases.
Thank goodness.
So 9 people in the same room?
Yeah, at the table, yes.
So how do you reach that common ground? How do you come to a conclusion? How do you find a solution? How do you reach that point?
Because the mediator helps. We're an assist. And the way that we assist is I like to say, chase the clarity and accuracy of everything you're saying. I'm going to make sure I know it, I can say it back to you, and then I can make a guess. Seems like, sounds like, looks like, feels like for you, this is this. I use my paraverbal curiosity in my voice.
Yeah.
And you correct me, or you say, yes, Kathleen, that's correct. So we do that slowly but surely around the table.
So now, mediation in the United States of America, how does it work and how is it different to the system here in Sri Lanka? Is it somewhat similar, or do you see a striking change?
It's somewhat similar around the world. There's 4 concepts around the world. Mediation is voluntary. Mediators are neutral. Mediation is about self-determination. You make a win-win decision, and mediation is also voluntary. So around the world it has similarities. Just in the United States we've been doing it in the courts for a very long time, so our system is set up to handle a lot of mediations.
What are your thoughts of mediation currently in the country? Like, do you think there is much scope to it in the future?
I think there is, and I'm very excited for what TMI can bring to Sri Lanka's mediation.
In the future, what do you want to do, Raasheda? What are your thoughts?
I'm figuring it out, but mediation is always there to help me.
Yeah. So now, Kathleen, going into, I'm going to be a little blunt here. It's not easy coming out with a personal issue in front of a stranger. The mediator is a stranger, right? Ultimately.
Yeah.
And also your other, the opposing party. How does a mediator create that safe environment to sort of open up and create that neutral environment and balance?
That's a really good question. We have a lot of pre-mediation contact through phone calls, Zoom calls, paperwork documentation. But when everyone comes to the table, right now my tone of voice, is it attractive or not attractive? My paraverbals, how quickly I'm talking, my pitch, my pace, my tone, is it attractive or not attractive? So we start to build trust and rapport and bonding right away with our paraverbals. And then we build more trust and rapport and bonding, because when you're upset and a mediator explains to you exactly how you're feeling, wow, it feels good. It's validation, it's acknowledgement, it's value. The currency of especially facilitative mediation is honor. So everyone at the table gets honored by the mediator. Therefore, we start to bond. And if you can bond with the mediator, you might be able to bond with the other party eventually as well.
How does a mediation process usually start? So the two parties come together. How does the opening, what is the opening like? Walk us through the process.
You just said it. It's an opening statement of me as the mediator.
Yeah.
As Raasheda knows, we start to explain the process. What's going to happen? What mediation is and what's going to happen today. So we start with our opening statement, and then after we've made our opening statement, we ask our parties. We call people at the table parties. I don't know why.
Yeah.
What are your opening statements? What's brought you to the mediation table today? And you get to explain. But then I summarize and make sure that I've heard both of you. So the power of the mediator at the table begins with a summary.
Now, confidentiality also plays a pivotal part in any process, not just mediation, but any problem that comes across and you go to someone, the first thing you will say is, don't tell this person, don't tell that person. But in mediation, of course, it's more professional. And is there a process where there is signing of contracts to ensure the confidentiality of both parties and what is discussed during the process?
The signing of a mediated agreement, just an agreement to mediate, an agreement to sit down together, as soon as that gets signed, the confidentiality is 100% for the mediator.
Mediator?
The mediator is not allowed to speak about. And the confidentiality process continues when people come to the table. Now sitting at the table together is confidential in some countries and some states. And then if we talk in private one-on-one, that has an extra layer of confidentiality where I have to ask your permission before I can speak it over to the other person. So there's usually three layers of confidentiality at a mediation table.
Now, just want to ask you a different perspective and different point of view. There might be instances where, certain customers or clients or parties, when something goes wrong, they might actually blame the mediator. Have there been instances like that? And how is a mediator protected? Is there a law to protect the mediator from such instances? So on and so forth.
Well, oftentimes when you declare you're a neutral, you make yourself the safest person in the room. So yes, you do get yelled at.
But is there a bond or something in that context that is signed to protect the mediator? Something like an insurance cover, I would say.
In the United States, mediators we can have malpractice insurance if we want to. A lot of mediators have $1 million policy, but that's a personal choice. It's not something that's necessary or mandated. So it's very difficult to be a mediator that has done something grossly wrong, because there's so much empowerment of people at the table. As long as you're not telling people what to do, as long as you're not giving them orders, you're not giving your opinions, you're not creating offers from ourselves at the facilitative mediation table, you will not usually get in trouble. But there are other types of mediation, evaluation, types of mediation where you are a team member with those people that you're in the room with. So there's different kinds of mediation. I practice mostly facilitative in settlement conference mediations, which are all private sessions.
Right. So, Raasheda, now from your side and your point of view, how do you think managing challenges has been coming from your side as a young adult going into society? And also in terms of mediation, how has this sort of molded you into making decisions at a very young age, proving your point across, facilitating a neutral role? How do you think this will sort of bring about a positive change in your life?
Well, for someone like me, I'm the one who runs away from problems and I can't face it. Right. But then mediation kind of puts you in the live process where you have to confront both parties and truly understand what they are saying. So you're taking the bigger picture and you're breaking it down into smaller pieces so you understand and so they understand as well. So it makes you able to understand truly the entire process, and then you feel more comfortable with your own decisions and everyone else's.
Do you think you will be taking up mediation as a full-time job in the future?
Maybe. I've definitely started to enjoy it a lot more recently.
So, Kathleen, when two parties have difficulty in communicating with each other, especially during mid-process of mediation, how do you jump in and, dissolve that rising situation? Because, when two parties come together, sometimes it's conflict of interest as well. You might have a different opinion, I might have a different opinion, and that could lead to a backlash. So how do you...
It does.
Yeah.
Very great question. And first of all, as a facilitative mediator, we understand that a conflict is a conflict because it's got emotionality attached to it. A dispute, you can work it out with your brain, the front part of your brain. A conflict is emotional, tied to a dispute, therefore it's called a conflict. So it's really hard. And when that happens, every mediator has and Raasheda is going to find her style, her confidence at that mediation table, and her courage to ask the difficult questions. My style is I name it. I just say, looks like we're having trouble agreeing here.
Right.
Can you tell me more about this? So I go straight for it.
Yeah.
That's my style, and that's how I train as well. People, as you were saying earlier, just step into it. And that's one skill set, to step in it, because as soon as I name it, it's called name it to tame it. As soon as I name it, people they feel validated, so they start to settle down.
Right. So now you got into this industry quite some time ago, about 20, 30 years ago. Yeah. So back when you started, Kathleen, this process of mediation and also as a mediator, to where we are now, 2024, on a fine Thursday afternoon here in Sri Lanka, what is it like? What have the changes been like throughout the past few years? What sort of changes have you encountered from back in the day to where we are now?
Back when I started in 2008, it was more pragmatic, let's get to the business, the numbers, the business deal. No one paid attention to emotionality. And I was like, what about their heart when I started? And everyone told me to be quiet because we weren't talking about emotional tenor back then. After the Ukraine-Russia encounter, people started paying attention to crisis and emotions and trauma. And now it's really changed where we're teaching about emotional tenor, discharging strong emotions at the table. And now it's okay, because that's the full person. The emotional tenor is oftentimes we're looking very composed right here, but inside of us, subterranean, other things might be happening emotionally, and that's hidden. Now the table invites that emotionality to come out, because people are not going to make decisions with the front of their brain if their back brain is stuck in emotionality. So it's more welcome now, and I'm really glad to see that. It's more my style, and I've been training it for 6 years, and now it feels easier to train about it because it's more accepted. So I'm really happy about that.
So ultimately, at the end of your mediation process with two parties, how do you all reach a conclusion? How do you all reach one common decision for both parties to agree on?
You build a bridge.
Okay.
And the way that you build a bridge is to pay attention to each person individually at first, 110% thoroughly. And then when you have the agenda of the issues they're trying to negotiate, and after you've paid attention to all people at the table, then you can start to build a bridge, and that is built with a settlement agreement, and that's language. So it becomes language choice, becomes logos, word choice, and then it becomes wordsmithing. So what I do is when I read aloud an agreement, a seemingly agreement that I have, I'll say, stop me when I say a word that you don't like. It's that stopping point that gives people power now to control the end of the process, which is the written settlement agreement, which becomes either a legal document or a memorandum of understanding that a lawyer can turn into a legal document. And that's how the process typically ends.
So now, have there been instances where, okay, let's say an issue takes place, right? And let's hypothetically create a scenario here. Let's say I'm going through a certain issue and I'm looking for a mediator. And you happen to be a mediator, of course, and you are also my friend, right? Does that cause an issue? Is there a process of being unbiased impartiality? Or do you recommend or suggest that if you are looking for a mediator, you get a complete stranger to both parties?
The answer is yes and yes. You can do it either way, because there's a lot of small towns where everyone knows everyone. So the question becomes for you, do you feel comfortable that I could be neutral? That's one question to ask, because that's in your control. And do I feel comfortable that I can be neutral as well? And maybe the answer for me is no, and maybe the answer for you is yes. If the answer for me is no, I can't mediate that case. But if both people, I have a case right now that's been going on for a year. I've had a year of private sessions with a case in Massachusetts. And if the other side wants to have several private sessions with me as well, and they think that I'm neutral, I can now mediate that case with them both sitting at the table. So it becomes a matter of what's comfortable for me as the mediator, and also what's comfortable for the parties sitting at the table with their impression of me as their mediator.
Now, after both the parties or any amount of parties reach a common ground or reach a common solution, does the mediator ensure that these solutions are practiced, or is your job done after your meeting is over?
My job is to challenge what they think they can do in the outside world at the mediation table first before I let them go. So I will reality check. Are you sure you can do that? What makes you think you can do that? How are you going to do that? It's called the SMART test.
Right.
Specific, measurable, achievable.
So
can you really do it in real life? And prove to me that you can. That's how I run my settlement agreements.
Right. So when is your process actually done? When can you actually say the job is over?
It's stage one done when they walk out of the room and they close the door behind them and they have the settlement agreement. But you can offer the mediation table for them to come back to if they reach a glitch within one of the settlements. They can come back and renegotiate. That is an option you build into the settlement agreement. If it's in court and there's a judgment on it, if they don't work it out, then they're going to have to come back to court. They have that option, or come back to mediation as well. So either option, they still have that justice in place for themselves to pursue.
All right, time is ticking and we have to take our first break this evening. Join us and we will be back. Welcome back to the show this evening, and we are on this week's edition of the Spotlight talking about all things mediation. So Raasheda, I'm going to direct my question to you. As someone belonging to the youth generation, this is a bit of a difficult transition period, because sometimes we're mixed with emotions, we're transitioning from different age groups. So this is a time of life where certain things happen and you have like conflict of emotions. Sometimes as a teenager you be rebellious, sometimes you throw tantrums, you get mad and you get emotional. It's different things. Now when all of these come into an argument, how do you strike that balance as a young girl?
As I'm learning and as I'm growing, I think I'm learning also that everyone is human, and like Kathleen said, everyone has a heart, they have their own emotions. So understanding that everyone comes from some place where their own mind is like in an array and in some kind of disrupt, understanding that is the most important. So once you get that down, then you're good to go. Everything seems accomplishable.
How do you sort of like regulate your emotions, especially when you feel that an argument during a mediation process is escalating? How do you take a step back?
That's really tricky.
Yeah.
Because everyone wants to get their piece in,
Exactly.
everyone wants to say
And
what they
everyone
want.
wants to prove a point.
Exactly.
So how do you balance it as a young girl?
That's why it's important to have a mediator, because they let you do that. They help you do that. So you can say your piece and they can say their piece as well. So they're just a constant reminder that, you know, it's fine. You can say your piece, you can feel understood, and they can say their piece, they can feel understood. So you get that kind of out of your chest, and at the end of the day, you feel relieved that both of the sides are like on the table and out there.
Yeah. So Kathleen, since we're talking about from the mediator's perspective, it can be quite draining sometimes. You're listening to a lot of people's problems, and you also have to keep your calm and cool. You have to be patient. You also have to give solutions sometimes, be a good listener, and you can't also let these problems get to you as well. How do you draw that mental block, and how do you sort of protect your mental peace when it comes to issues like that?
During the mediation, to protect your mental peace, you just make sure you're really curious about people, that you're genuinely interested in what they have to say. So you're so much focused on them and not yourself. But after the mediation is over and all that stress in your body now walks out the door with you, I practice Bikram yoga.
Right.
An intense workout, because stress is stored in the body. And exercise, intense exercise, is the very best way to free the body of the stress, and that's what I do. I free my body of that stress.
So now, in terms of mediation here in Sri Lanka, what are your thoughts on it? Where do we stand as a country?
I'm not familiar with that of the legal process. What I am familiar with and so grateful for is working with teens in Sri Lanka, and we're excited to embark upon this journey with Sri Lanka, with a partnership with us, and that's where we're headed. Typically across the world, mediation has an 83% agreement rate. I'm sure that Sri Lanka is close or similar to that agreement rate as well.
So what is the reason for you to have a target audience such as the teenagers?
A couple years ago, Dick Hawkins, our founder, who also started the mock trial back in the 80s, decided, after he did mediation tournaments for college students with INADR, I-N-A-D-R, decided to start with teenagers. So he called and said, "Kathleen, would you do mediation tournaments with teenagers?" And I said, "No, thank you, I don't have time." So then he asked his daughter, Kathy Hawkins Keys, if she would start the idea, and she said yes. So she started it. They had their first teenage mediation tournaments in St. Louis, Missouri, and another one in Des Moines, Iowa, teenagers, online. And then we were going to have an in-person teenage mediation tournament in Arizona, so Kathy asked me if I would train them to have mediator skills, and that's where TMI started, Teen Mediation International, and that's the target audience we have now, which is middle school students and high school students. Last month we had an 11-year-old mediating in our training, our monthly training, and she was wonderful.
Right.
So that's how we got to that target audience, and my idea was to help teenagers find their identity and fight less with people. Stop using your words as weapons, and don't use weapons as weapons. Let's teach teenagers mediation skills for free. And
that is actually a good thing. You don't have to, I mean, even mediation as a skill, it necessarily doesn't have to be solving huge cases in courts or out of court. It can even be simple issues amongst your friends. Because what people don't understand is words have power, right? And these words can actually affect someone in the most disastrous way. So it's a good practice, especially to start young, because most often also we keep saying that mediation and good communication skills have to be inculcated in students from a very young age. So the fact that you have started this among teenagers is actually a brilliant start. So Raasheda, in your opinion, teenagers coming into play, as I mentioned, teenagers, especially in this 2024 era, the Gen Zs as we call it, have a bit of a different mindset. How do you deal with that?
Exactly, we are all just so comfortable with our own thoughts. We never think about what other people have to say. We don't think about other people and their problems. We're just comfortable with saying, you know, I'm this, I want to be alone, I don't want to talk about it, and that's the end of it. But learning that it is important to look further than just yourself is important, and mediation helps you do that. So I'd say it's important for every teenager to at least know the meaning of mediation and apply that in your life.
So what does mediation coaching look like to you, Kathleen? What do you sort of give your students?
Well, first of all, we have to have fun.
Right.
We say make friends, make peace, make a difference. And we're developing diplomatic citizens, right? So we have fun, and then we train a specific skill. Like we had a Creating Peace series where I trained on an apology. There's 3 parts to an apology. There's remorse, there's taking responsibility, and there's making amends. And you can work with any one of those 3. Then we said, go practice one of them with your role play. And they went and practiced it. They tried to get an apology, and they came back and said, well, I couldn't get an apology. So we pushed them over into the pool, and they get to practice right there in the breakout rooms.
So TMI, it's a global chain, and it is also now in Sri Lanka. How has the response been like from the Sri Lankan community heading into a global stand?
Well, we shall ask.
Yeah, what are your
what's
thoughts,
been your
Raasheda?
response?
Well, actually, I went into mediation not knowing anything. So I had actually attended the session, and I told them, I was like, I don't know what mediation is. I don't know, like, can you explain to me? And they said, it's fine. Like, we're all learning here. Like, everyone's new, everyone's learning. So just join in and let's have a look. So I met like lots of people. It was so diverse, the community. And we just sat down. There was like a coach. They explained to us. They made us all feel comfortable. And at the end of the day, it was just like we were just chilling with our friends on call. And it was really nice experience.
So after that, what happened? What has it been like? What has the journey been like in the academy?
Well, we're still learning. So we do get like, they show us how mediation works. So that's like the first, you say your statement piece, your opening, then you hear this part of the party and then the other side of the party. And like Kathleen always reminds us, it's important to look at every single part of the conversation, not just what's in the tip. You have to delve deeper into everything. So we are constantly learning, and it's amazing.
So now, over the years, Kathleen, as you come with about 20 years of experience, what does the future of mediation look like to you? Is there a lot of scope?
Well, part of the future is what's being talked about, where these teenagers will now go practice a skill in their real life. Like when they have a conflict with their mom, their dad, their teacher, their friends, practice a skill. How did it work? Did it work out? Yes, no, what happened? How did you feel? So that's part of mediation, the skill set within your everyday life. I think the professional part of mediation, I think you're going to see more companies, instead of going straight to arbitration, they will mediate first. And then
so mediation is sort of the first step.
It is not right now. Arbitration usually is with contracts, but mediation should be first.
Okay.
And that's what I think the future is going to look like more. And courts are mandating mediation because they're overcrowded. Courts across the world are overcrowded, so they're making people, which is kind of, you know, counterintuitive. Oh, it's voluntary, but we're going to make you go to mediation. I just tell people the court's making you come to the appointment. While you're here at the appointment, would you like to sit down and have a chat? Yeah. So they can decide, right? But I think that's your future. More
because even these court hearings, Kathleen, not just in Sri Lanka but around the world, lag.
Yes, they do.
So sometimes there are about 5-10 hearings when you can actually sit down, talk about it and sort it out, which is much easier, and it can also be done in one go. Yes. So why not resort to it?
Yes.
And now that you work with teenagers, Kathleen, from an experienced perspective, what do you see in the younger generation coming into play? Are they open to this approach? Do you see a bit of a backlash coming in? Because this generation that we are currently in is a bit of a complex generation. They are dealing with mixed emotions. Everyone has an opinion of their own currently. So how do you deal with that?
Well, actually, I think because everyone has an opinion, plus Google has an opinion, plus all the social media have opinion, everyone's got opinions. I think what's been happening, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that it feels so good to be paid attention to. It feels so good to be validated. It feels so good to be taught a skill to give you confidence. It's personal.
Yeah.
And I think that feels very, very good. And plus, we're having fun as well. So I think that combination is going to help the generation and the future generations understand that individuals matter. At the end of the day, people matter. Like, my Google phone doesn't matter more than my person next to me.
That's
people
true.
matter.
Now, after a mediation process has come to an end, how do you provide resources and support to ensure the smooth flow of processes and happenings that happen after a mediation process? Are there follow-up meetings that you have? Do you check up on your clients?
Again, you can provide the pathway. If you get stuck, you can come back.
Right.
You can bring in pamphlets from other agencies that could be maybe lend an assist as well.
Yeah.
And court is always an option as well. But a good settlement agreement will already be reality checked very hard at the mediation table before people walk out and start to practice it in their real life. One case I had for 7 months, I said, I don't believe you that you can do this. You're going to have to go out and practice it and come back in 2 weeks and prove to me that it worked.
Yeah.
And when they came back, they tweaked it. Now it was working for them. And then I signed that that settlement agreement.
I would like to ask you one story. What has been the most challenging mediation session you have had to work with? Have there been multiple?
Yes, I mediated in the courts south of Boston, Massachusetts, with the people that had restraining orders attached to their lives, which meant they went overboard, they overpowered someone, and legally they had restraining orders of distance between people. They weren't allowed to approach for whatever the reason. So I learned very quickly that I was involved with some very difficult cases. But I think, actually the most difficult case I had was a divorce in Washington State, where one of the parties was used to being humiliated all the time, and the other party was used to getting their way all the time. So there's this power imbalance. And when they came to the mediation table empowered the person that was used to being humiliated all the time, and they didn't agree to they got everything they wanted except one thing, and they didn't agree to the one thing. So the divorce couldn't happen because it felt so good to be in the driver's seat for a change and not be the one that was so disempowered all the time that they didn't give in. And I couldn't work with that because it felt so good. That's emotional tenor. It felt so good to be in charge, be in control. That mediation didn't settle, and 3 years later, the judge told me, Kathleen, they're still not divorced because the enjoyment of having control and power just felt so good. So I think that was actually my most difficult.
Okay, so that is what we call power imbalance, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So in terms of creating an impact in society through mediation, what do you hope to do more in the future?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think this TMI is really important in sticking more with this, but I've been asked to write as well. I submitted a chapter for academic writing, which I never thought that I would do. And now I've been asked to write a book based on a slide deck, 32 chapter book, and a workbook. And I think I want to take it into the prisons. The workbook, I want to take it into the prisons because that transition space where people come out of prison and then they have to re-enter society, they don't know how to do it. So I think I'm going to take the mediation practice, my practice, into that transition space in the prisons across the United States for sure.
Right. So Raasheda, now that you are sort of actively in this mediation process, are there any challenges and obstacles that you see throughout that Kathleen might actually help figure it out?
I think that's all been solved through mediation, but one of the main things is that every teenager thinks it's uncool to overshare or even share. They just want to like be like, no, caring is too, it's too like, you know, like showing.
Yeah.
So that obviously comes from, and it develops into the need to be like, have apathy, you know. You don't want to say, I care about you, that's not important for them. Yeah. So knowing that when you are finally understood, and knowing that you're heard, and knowing that someone relates to you, that brings people so much more closer. So if only everyone knew that actually caring is cool, they'd do it much more often. So that's something that I think I realized as well while mediation.
That's a brilliant answer. So Kathleen, how does TMI hope to sort of enhance mediation in terms of global standards in Sri Lanka?
Well, we want to work with the teenage population and make that change from the, you know, from bottom up instead of top down. And that alone is just a glorious goal and opportunity to really impact mediation. Other than that, I think the quality of mediation training is important, that we train according to, we're going to pay attention to the documents, yes. We're also paying attention to the narrative of your story, and we're also going to pay attention to your body language when your words disagree with your body language, because the body keeps score. When you say like, yes, Kathleen, I agree. No, that's not good enough. And we're going to pay attention to emotional tenor. And I think once we grab all 4 of those areas and really validate each one of those 4 areas, I think that's going to really put the mediation practice in a valuable spot worldwide.
So now that we are dealing with teenagers, time is ticking, so I'm just trying to pop in a few questions. Teenagers also, there are parents involved. So what would you tell all the parents watching us today? Because ultimately the decision to send your child for a mediation campaign or a mediation camp, the parents have to give the ultimate approval, especially in Sri Lanka. So what would you tell our parents watching us today?
Well, they have an open invitation to attend anytime they want to, of course.
It's a stepping stone.
Yeah, that's well put. It is a stepping stone, and it's we call ourselves, I call our group the yes and adults, because you know, parents are supposed to protect and teach their children, take care of them, and have a lot of responsibilities. We're the yes and. We have the freedom to skill teach.
Yeah.
We have the freedom to bolster them in confidence. Teenagers are a very disenfranchised group of people, and their power is being constrained, and they're lashing out because they're disenfranchised with weapons and words and guns and knives and all those kinds of things. We don't want that for our teens. We just want them to find their identity and pursue their goals in life.
So Raasheda, what is your take-home message to everyone watching us today?
It's cool to care, so care. That's it.
All right, Kathleen, what are your parting words to everyone in our audience today?
That's our new slogan. It's cool to care.
Really? Okay. So what is your final message?
I think that instead of having parallel conversations in life, when someone is upset with us, we really need to say, thank you very much. Let me make sure I heard what you said. This is what you told me. Is that correct? Is there anything else? Fully absorbing the person's energy and words that are upset with us, instead of being our own defense attorney and having parallel conversations and trying to one-up each other, which gets us nowhere. So let's do things differently. That would be my final message.
Brilliant. So on that note, it is time to wrap things up, and we are thanking you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having us. Yeah.
And on that note, dear viewers, we are ready to close things on this week's edition of The Spotlight. Join us again next Monday, same time, same place, for a story that will ignite change. Until we meet again, stay safe.